Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and blog. Today I'm going to be featuring a couple of stamp sets from Honeybee Stamps. And I'm going to be making two cards in this video. For the cards I'll be using the Beautiful Life stamp set and the Special Delivery stamp set and the Happy Mail stamp set. So because I don't have an exact plan in mind for these cards, what I'm going to first do is stamp multiples of many of the designs, mainly the mailbox, the envelopes, and I did stamp a couple of the larger envelopes, but I didn't end up using them. A couple of the snails, I did use those of course, and a couple of the little birds and the banners. So I'm just going to stamp those in, and I'm going to be coloring them with a little bit of Copic markers and a little bit of pencil crayon because I don't have all the colors I would like in the Copic markers. I am still working on getting a little bit of a collection. I think I only have about 10 or 15 at the moment. So what I'm doing here, just stamping these on and then coloring them in, and I'm going to speed this up as much as I can, but in the end this entire video as I'm going right now is almost half an hour long, so I'm going to try to remove as much insignificance as I can, but I'm very sorry in advance for the length of the video. So as you'll see, I'm not being very fussy about how perfectly I color in these envelopes and a lot of these pieces because I am going to fussy cut them all out. I don't believe she has any coordinating dies for her stamp sets, at least not that I've seen online, but fussy cutting them out, it really wasn't that hard. Now I did take that off camera. I took them into the other room and cut them out while I watched a bit of TV. So after that, I went through my stash of 6x6 paper packs and I found these two packs from the Great Canadian Dollar Store, and they were $2 or $2.50 a pack, which was a pretty good price. And I'm picking out a couple of designs that I like. I'm trying to find designs that are not dark or overpowering because for one of them I do want to use a background, and for one of them I do want to use a bit of a accent square or sentiment square, I guess you'd call it. So I'm just trying to pick out a couple of them that aren't overly flashy. So I cut one piece down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 to match the cardstock, and I cut two other pieces down to 3 by 3 inches because mainly I wasn't sure which piece was going to work out better in the end. So then I grabbed my Distress ink, and I'm using Mode Lawn and my blending tool, mini blending tool, and my little foam, and I'm just going to take and blend out a bit on the lower quarter of the card to try and appear something like grass. Now I've said it in other videos and I'll say it again, I suck at Distress ink blending. I think I'm too heavy-handed at it basically, but if you work at it enough, it does tend to blend itself out. I suppose anybody who's a little bit better at this would do a lot better job, but I was satisfied with it when I was done. So my next step after that was choosing which paper to place onto my card. In the end, I decided that on top of the card on top of the patterned paper, I would just put a piece of white note card that was cut down to 2 1/2 by 2 1/2 to allow the sentiment to show up a bit more, because after looking at it and looking at my sentiment, it wouldn't show up very clearly or crisp onto the pattern background, pattern paper. So the sentiment that I'm using on this card is from the Beautiful Life set. It is "You Are Loved," and I'm also going to be using the little sketchy hearts that come with it, the big ones and the small ones. And I'm doing this in a different kind of method, but I'm using the Electric Lime from Ranger. It's a dye-based ink, and I'm going to stamp that on first, and then I'm going to do the sketchy hearts in Ranger's Bubblegum and Grape Soda, and then I'm going to go back in and stamp over, but just off to the side and upwards a bit in my Hero Arts, the sentiment. I'm going to stamp that right back on there again. And I'm sorry for the camera shaking here. It's a new setup that I'm trying, but it's clearly not working. So I'll be readjusting all of this very, very shortly. So once the sentiment was in place, it was time for the rest of the assembly of the card. And I'm just using my Ranger multi-matte medium or multi-medium matte, whichever way you'd like to call it, to adhere most of the pieces on. There is only one piece that I'm going to be using some dimensional adhesive, and that will be for the mailbox. Also, what I did with the mailbox is I took my blade and I just trimmed along what would be the outside edge of the mailbox, and I cut that out with my blade so that I could stick some of the envelopes into the card and make it appear as if the envelope's full or the mailbox is full instead of cutting the envelopes themselves. So at that point I put in a few envelopes into the mailbox, trying to put the more plain ones towards the back, and I tried to put one with a kiss on it at the front, and I flipped it over and I put some adhesive in between the cards and on the top or on the back of the cards to hold them in place so that they wouldn't fall out of the mailbox when they were attached to the card. So then I used a few squares of dimensional adhesive and a bit of adhesive, just a tape runner, to adhere that on. After that, I took the little snail that I had cut out and I trimmed along its mouth just so that I could put a different envelope into his mouth. He's super cute as is, but I wanted to put a larger one to make it look more like he stole a letter from the mailbox, or he was delivering mail to the mailbox, one or the other. So I put that in his mouth. I put some adhesive tape runner on the back of the envelope and onto the back of the snail, and I adhere that onto the grass on the lower left hand side of the card. And so that completes the first card of this two-part. So now on to the next card. Once again, starting with a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, I took the pattern paper that I cut out earlier and I adhered that right onto the front of the note card. Looking back at it now, I could have just adhered it onto the front of the card base, but I tend to like making everything into note cards, that way I can send them or give them just like that as well. So after I adhered that on, I decided once again that the sentiments would be overpowered by the background. So I cut out a piece of cardstock at 4 by 3 1/2 inches to put on the upper half of the card, well, upper 3/4 of the card. And then I went to stamp my sentiments, and I stamped them like always in my Hero Arts Hero Hues black ink. And I used the Sending You stamps from the special delivery set. I used the word wonderful from the Beautiful Life set. And I used the Happy Mail from the Happy Mail set. Now once I had all my sentiments in place, it was time to start putting the cutouts into where they go. I started off with the snail, and I didn't give him a bigger envelope this time. I just left him as is. And once I put him on, I realized I had to draw his antennas, which I also did on the other card after the fact, so you didn't see that in the video, but I did draw back on his antennas because I couldn't fussy cut them out. And I just drew those on with my Micron pen. I believe it was the number 1 pen that I had used. So for the mailbox, I'm doing the same thing as I did in the previous card. I am just cutting along the outside edge of the box so that I can put some envelopes in. I'm going to only put one envelope in the mailbox this time, and I'm going to have a few of them falling out as if the mailbox literally overflowed onto the ground. I'm not doing a grass or anything like that on this card. I am just going to have a mailbox kind of floating on nothing, but I think it looked okay in the end. And once again, I'm adhering the post on with my Ranger multi-matte medium, or medium multi-matte, matte medium multi, whatever you want to call it. So then I stuck the mailbox on just using my tape runner this time, not dimensional adhesive, and I started stacking the envelopes and making them look like they were falling out. After that, it was time to continue on with the blank parts of the sentiment area, we'll call it. And I used two of the banners as well as the little XOXO stamp from the special delivery set. And I used two of the little birds from that same set as well. And I just drew what looks to be a string from their mouth to the banner. After that, the only other thing I did was I put some glossy accents on the shell of the snail and some liquid enamel, I believe it's called, onto a few spots just to make a few dots. And that completed this card as well. So both cards today were not fairly hard, but they were a long process for filming. I did try and narrow down the video as much as I could, and I must say I'm quite impressed considering how long it was when I started. So if you have any questions or comments about these, feel free to leave a comment down below and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and of course give us a big thumbs up. Keep in mind, if you do subscribe before the end of the month, you do get entered into a contest to win an Art Impressions Spinners stamp set. So that wraps up today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, happy crafting!